Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Every Day is Saturday. I'm your host, Brad Gatto. My normal co-host, Matt Stahl, is not here with me today. This is episode number 2 that I've upgraded my host with a better looking host. So today I have Kurt Brown with me. I'm going to introduce him in just a second. But today's episode, and the reason I've got Kurt here is because at the end of the day, one of the things that we want to do here at Fiat is a ton of education. And that education comes through this podcast, it comes through our blogs, it comes through just the work we're doing in the trenches with the families that we serve. But one of those key areas, and one of the areas that everybody assumes we should be doing, which we do, is investments. And at the end of the day, there's just a lot of things that the average lay investor just doesn't know or understand. And frankly, it's the fault of my industry. Like, we just haven't done a super great job of bringing things to light and helping people understand that 85-page statement. And so I'm super excited to have Kurt here today because that's what we're going to do. Fiat has recently partnered with Kurt and his firm. Kurt is the CEO of a firm called TownSquare. TownSquare, for all intents and purposes, is Fiat's chief investment officer. So you and your team has brought a lot of horsepower to help us bring this education and some sophistication to the type of investing that the families that we're working with here at Fiat are doing. So Kurt, thanks for joining us today, man.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me in. This is great.
I can't believe you let me talk that long without interrupting.
No, this is great. It's nice to have somebody else doing the talking. This is wonderful.
So Kurt, before we get into the nuts and bolts, let's talk about the important stuff. Tell our listeners a little bit about you, because you, first of all, you don't live in the Twin Cities. You flew up here for this from
Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake City.
Which is not where I'm from. I'm from Northern California. A lot of business there 22 years ago, and fell in love with the mountains and stayed. It's a great place to call home.
There's a lot of places that have mountains, so why Salt Lake?
Well, like I said, it wasn't by design. I went there to buy a business. I'm a recovering Wall Streeter. I went there from Manhattan. I mean, where would you rather live, Manhattan or the mountains? Right. So
there's a lot in that statement. What does that mean? What does a recovering Wall Streeter mean?
I grew up very blue collar.
Yep.
My dad's a mechanic. I come from a long line of grease monkeys.
Okay.
My dad's one of the greatest.
Can you say that in 2023?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I can't. It's my dad. Right? So, it's my dad. My dad's incredible. He was one of those dads that was like, you're going to have more than me.
Yeah.
I'll sacrifice whatever I need to,
Awesome.
And I grew up born in 71, grew up in the 80s, influenced by people like Michael J. Fox on Family Ties, Alex P. Keaton. I'm going to go to Wall Street.
I thought you were going to say Michael Jordan. You said 80s, and then you started with Michael.
Jordan too.
But then you went to Keaton.
Yeah. Some of your listeners are old enough to remember that show, Family Ties.
Yeah, I know.
Right? Yeah. One of the most embarrassing things I can tell you about myself is I wore a tie to school every day in the 8th grade because I wanted to be like him. I wanted to go to Wall Street, get rich.
No way.
This was my program. And I wanted to be a pro basketball player. Those are my two things. So I played a little college basketball.
So you love the Michaels, the Jay Foxes, and the Jordans.
Yeah. I end up in New York, trader on the New York Stock Exchange.
Okay.
Dropped out of college. Not a lot of people know that. And I loved being in. I was one of those traders that ran around, yelled and screamed for a living.
Yeah. You still had physical tickets.
Yeah. This is like pre the computers running everything.
Okay. Yeah.
This is mid 90s. And it was an incredible experience.
I think that's the visual most people get when they think of Wall Street. It's not that way anymore today.
That's right. In fact, the New York Stock Exchange, when you see it on TV today, it is a museum. There's nothing actually happening down there. Like, I mean, it's really to bring clients and show things off. Everything is happening upstairs now.
Yeah. That's crazy. So you were one of the people running around. So you ended up there from Northern California, college dropout. How make the connection? How did you get to Wall Street?
When I was going to school, I fell in love with the markets. I was a total junkie. I should have had a social life. I should have been partying.
But you had an eye on in 8th grade, so we already knew.
I would stay up late, and my getting crazy was like reading Bloomberg reports. And I absolutely loved it. Total nerd. And I wrote a little program that was designed to be a trading program. And this was kind of before the computers had taken over.
Yep.
And I entered a bunch of fake investing competitions where you get the fake money. And I started winning some of them.
Okay.
And a really important person in my life who was a great influence for me, very wealthy individual. I heard about it, came and took me to lunch. I'm living on like $320 a month.
How old are you at this point?
23.
Okay.
He takes me to lunch and says, "Hey, I heard a rumor you're working on some investing thing." I said, "Yeah, I got this thing and I'm investing fake money and student loan money. Like all the things you shouldn't do, And he gets out a checkbook and writes me a personal check for $100,000.
Wow.
I mean, $100,000. I never thought I'd even see that much money. He says, I want you to put this in an account and I want you to see if this little strategy that you've written works for real with real money. And I said, of course, I thought I was a bad A. So,
well, yeah,
I'm like, and what do you think happened? What do you think the first thing was that happened? Yeah, I lost a lot of it. Yeah, you're right. You didn't want to say it.
I didn't want to go there.
I lost 40% of it in a couple of weeks. I was mortified because this guy was like a second father to me. And you'll appreciate the story. He calls me to his house. I know he knows what's going on. I know he's watching the account. And he says, hey, man, how's it going? And I'm like on the verge of tears. It's going so bad. And this is after a couple of years of winning all these like fake investment competitions with fake money.
Yeah.
And I tell him what's going on. And he says to me, I want you to listen to me. This $100,000 for me is like $50 for you. I gave it to you as a dumb college kid, knowing I would never see this money again. So here's what I want you to do. He's like, anything you make me, we're giving to charity.
Wow.
So there's no pressure here. This money in my mind is already gone. What was incredible was my first lesson in financial management, because when the stress came off, I thrived.
Sure.
And we grew that little $100,000 into about $17 million.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Over what period? Like
over a couple of years. Yeah. Over a couple of years. And of course, by now I'm not going to school. Right. Sure. Like, why would I go to class?
Yeah.
That's why I'm a dropout. I was like a double major and like studying hard, And I grew this little fund, and then an investment bank in New York called me, and I had traded a lot with them.
Yeah.
And they said, hey man, you've got some friends here that speak highly of you. Why don't you come and be one of our traders? And that's how I got to the New York Stock Exchange. I kind of took that little fund I was running. And
so what year did you go out there?
I went out there in 95.
Okay.
Came back in 2000. It was a wild ride.
When in 2000? That was a very interesting year.
Right at the top.
Really?
Yeah. I resigned on January 30th.
Wow.
I got the bonus check from the firm, because that's how the Wall Street banks work, right? In January, you get your bonus. Your bonus is bigger than your salary.
Yep.
So everyone plays for the bonus. And then everyone trades teams. Like every January, February, Wall Street's just trading people, especially in trading. And that was it. I was done. And there was this firm in Utah, of all places, that I had become friends with.
Yeah.
And went out there and saw them and bought a third of the firm, and then never left. Just kind of fell in love.
Been there ever since.
Yeah.
So for 2000. So you've been there for 23 years.
Yeah.
23 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you get from Wall Street to where you're at today? And so I guess what we should start with, Kurt, is what is TownSquare?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how did you get from?
I think the first question is important. It's the reason that I built the firm. Is that what happens is now I'm running a fund. I'm in Utah, learning how to snow ski. And again,
important stuff again.
I'm single. I should be dating and building a life, And we grow this fund, and we were really fortunate. We beat the S&P 500 by a lot, by like 20% in a year, like a lot. And we got on a lot of people's radars, and people started sending us money. And for the first time in my life, I started meeting financial advisors. I'd never met a financial advisor. I was a hardcore Wall Streeter. I thought I was really smart and kind of like looked down a little bit on people that might have sold insurance or were financial advisors or whatever. I fashioned myself as a real kind of Wall Street pro. And yet at the same time, I start meeting all these financial advisors. And in the same day, I'm meeting every type of financial advisor. Like in the morning, I might be with a guy at Goldman Sachs that manages billions of dollars for the wealthiest clients in America. And then in the afternoon, I'm meeting with a woman that runs a one-person financial planning firm out of a strip mall. Right. But they both use my fund.
Yeah.
So I'm getting to know these financial advisors. What I learned in the next couple of years came as a shock to me because of what I had been told when I was in New York. And that was that many of the best strategy-oriented financial advisors were totally independent. They were not part of a bank. They were not part of some big corporation. They ran a small wealth advisory or financial planning firm, and they were exceptional at what they did.
Yeah.
But the hiccup was, and the idea for the business for TownSquare was, families are nervous to move from a brand name bank and move their money to a small firm they've never heard of.
Sure.
because there's safety in finance with size.
Yep.
And I watched year after year as clients would tell me, I don't really even like my bank. I'm at Morgan Stanley, for example. It's a big name. I don't even necessarily love it. I just have a lot of money and I feel like I should be there. And then they would say to me, hey, I met this Brad Gatto guy. I really like him. He's more attentive. He's dialed in better on what I need, but can I leave Morgan Stanley? And I was probably asked that question 200 times before I figured out, hey, there's an opportunity here. And the opportunity was, and what TownSquare is a business that helps independent advisors. They aren't owned by a bank. Fiat, your firm, is not owned by a bank or an insurance company. It helps them get access to the most sophisticated investments, Wall Street type analysts, traders, etc. So my firm is made up of recovering Wall Streeters like me, right? Who provide that back end horsepower on the investment side to independent advisors like you. And it's amazing what we've seen in the last several years in terms of not just wealthy families, but even like corporate clients wanting to leave that bank world and partner with somebody that gives them something more personal, more custom, more attentive, right? Better service and actually no conflict of interest.
Yeah.
Right. Like if my broker works at Morgan Stanley, I'm paid by Morgan Stanley to sell Morgan Stanley product, but you're not.
Right. You're
not beholden to anybody. Right. And it's just a much more comfortable environment for me to operate in.
Yeah, I don't want to make it sound like when I say what I'm going to say that Merrill, Morgan, or UBS or Wells Fargo or any of these are necessarily bad. But you do in life, there's pros and cons to every decision you make, and we're always making sacrifices and we're making compromises. And when you go with those bigger firms, a lot of times you're going to be a number. The service isn't maybe going to be as personalized as it could be, but you've got that security, as so you view it. And so you make that sacrifice because you go after like, hey, this is my life savings. I need to make sure that they have the fundamentals of the education needed to be able to make sure I don't lose all my money, or that there's this sense of security in the fact that when the markets go down, I've got to be safer at a Merrill or Morgan than I would be at a Fiat or another small independent boutique firm.
Exactly.
Right. And so, and I'm not saying either that Fiat has figured out how to make the decision without any sacrifice or compromise, or that we've got everything done perfectly. But what I hear from your story and what I want to pull out and see if you agree with is having somebody like a firm like TownSquare brings the horsepower that you're going to get at one of these larger firms, but then hands that horsepower to somebody that knows who you are personally.
That's right.
Knows who your kids are, asks those types of questions, has seen your 1040, things like this.
Well, again, just the average person would not appreciate the number of conflicts of interest that are inside of Wall Street. It was a problem for me. I didn't like it at all. It was as you start advancing in your career. I mean, I was at a huge bank. I was at Bank of America, and I'm flying around the country meeting with CEOs, working on structured product and derivative programs for them. Guys worth $500 million to $1 billion, and these are some smart people, and they have no clue how I'm really getting paid. And there's a lot of conflicts. It's all legal, but it doesn't mean it's ethical. And by the way, there's bad financial advisors that are independent, and there's great ones that work at these banks that we're named.
Sure,
but we do need to find better ways to eliminate the conflicts. And the banking lobby has done a really good job of not helping that happen. Right. I mean, there are a lot of things that are not disclosed to investors. And I mean, investors in vanilla 401ks. Yeah. And I mean, I've been an expert witness in some class action lawsuits.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Including against the largest 401k plan provider in the United States. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs. And it's why when you say the phrase Wall Street, it can conjure up for a lot of people some negative feelings.
Yeah.
And understandably so, even though there are so many great people in that community also. But most investors understand that debt can be stacked against them.
So I do want to touch on that. We are going to come back to that. So because I want to leave the listeners with some like tangible, like, okay, what are you talking about? Like, what are some of the things that we need to know and be educated on? What are some of the kind of standard mistakes that you see that the average lay investor is making? But before we get there, let's talk a little bit more about the personal side. So that was kind of your individual story of how you got from, Wall Street, well, actually a college dropout. We'll start there. Mm-hmm. And then
I'm an adjunct at one of the universities in Utah. and it was really funny because I was volunteering at BYU in the finance department just to help the kids. You know? And they offered me a position to teach a class.
Really?
Yeah. And so I said, that's great. It pays like $3 an hour or whatever it pays. And I'm like, I'll do one class, right? And then they call me the dean's secretary. She's been the assistant to 5 deans. She calls me and she says, hey, listen, we're doing your paperwork for your contract to teach here as an adjunct. We don't know where you ended up getting your diploma from. We can't seem to find it. And I said to her, just straight faced, I said, hey, when you find it, can you let me know? So they said, you're not supposed to teach in the finance department if you don't have a degree. Yeah. I said, but you invited me to teach. So it's okay. I don't need to teach a class here, Yeah. And she said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do it, but let's not talk about the fact. So what do I do on the very first day of class every semester? It's right out of the gate. I just say, okay, I'm going to drop out. Let's just get that out of the way right out. And the students love it. I mean, so you start wearing it with a badge. Here's something
I've gotten to talk to you a lot the last couple of days, but here's something you don't know about me. I'm also a college dropout.
I did not know that.
Yep. I had one class left.
Get out of town.
One. And actually, Kurt, right now, 17 years later, I'm taking that class on Wednesday nights.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
This is a true story.
That's a true story.
What's the one class?
I'm in college right now. Nobody listening knows this.
This is beautiful.
Yeah. Well, the class is called Principles and Methods of Intercultural Leadership.
So it's a soft science class.
Yeah.
This is beautiful.
It's what Bethel would call a Z tag, because it's a community engagement course. So I have volunteer hours I have to do. I have community events I have to go to. I have a lot of books I have to read, papers I have to write.
I'm the guy that now has more respect for you because I know you're like that. We're in that club.
And okay. So ego can be good at times, but it can be really, really bad. And I would assume you would agree with this. As you've gotten older, your ego gets a little smaller because you realize all the things you don't know, right? How big the world of what I don't know is.
The first time I called my dad and apologized and said, Dad, I had no idea what you went through.
One of the first times I did that was the day my first son was born.
Exactly.
Like the second they come out, you don't even have to spend, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
My dad was so much smarter than I knew.
Gosh, yeah. But I walked out, my ego got me because my senior year, it was a J. So Bethel does J term. I don't know if you're familiar, but first semester, second semester, but crammed in the middle is this J term. So just January, you take one class for 3 weeks every day. You just knock one class out in 3 weeks.
Between the semesters.
Correct.
Squeeze it in.
Yep, they squeeze it in. So my J term course, because I was a youth ministry major, I was going to be a youth pastor for the rest of my life. I had to take this. They didn't call it Z tag back then, but because I'm now in this class with a bunch of undergrads, and my student ID number is still the same as it was back then. And it's literally an entire digit less. Theirs is all 7-digit number. Mine's a 6-digit number. But the class I had to take
0. I'm student 0. I'm that old.
Oh man, that's like patient 0. That's what that reminds me of. You never want to be 0.
That's right.
I'll try to shorten this up. So the class was a community engagement, and it was a missions trip to Toronto, Canada. And I couldn't afford it. College kid, I came from single parent, no money, putting myself through college. I have 2 jobs at this point. I have every student loan they'll possibly give me. And the student loans didn't cover my bills. They weren't enough. Every semester I took out all the loans, I paid the bill, and there was still a balance. And so I worked these jobs to pay the balance. And you couldn't go to the next semester until balance was paid from previous semester. So it was always this race at the end of the semester to get my bill paid. So this class is normal credit hours plus the cost of the trip. I had to pay for the trip. And I was like, I can't afford it. And maybe I didn't sell it hard enough, and maybe I didn't push hard enough, or I didn't ask the right questions. But as I remember it, and again, this could be my ego protecting me, but I remember it them not working with me and just no, it is what it is. That's the class. It's part of the requirements. You take it or you have to wait till later. I'm just fine, don't need you. My ego got, so I took my spring semester and walked out short that class.
And there was some support.
I could have figured 100%.
We're going to cover the cost.
100%. Yeah. There's always a way to get something done, right? Yeah. And I was married shortly thereafter. My wife kept pinging me, go back. It's one stupid class. Why aren't you doing this? But the further I got from it, the more I didn't care, the less I cared. But here we sit 17 years later, and what precipitated it was that I decided I wanted to activate a CFP. And they said the same thing that your college did.
Degree.
Well, okay, what's your degree in? And I'm like, well,
yeah.
You see.
Yeah. I've just been hoping.
Hard knocks. Hard knocks. I have a degree in hard knocks.
Like, what do they call those degrees? An honorary degree.
Yeah.
Like if I volunteer at the school enough, maybe they'll give me one.
So for 17 years, I've always said that I attended Bethel University.
I love it.
That's just what I say. So I will be a graduate this year, getting this class. I'm sitting there with Wednesday nights, 6 to 9 p.m. I have to drive to campus. It's an hour away.
God bless you. With all the kids.
Yeah. So you should go back.
I know. The truth is, I'm not as close as you, but if I take 11 classes, I'll have 3 bachelor's degrees.
Oh, man.
I ended up basically being a triple major. History, finance, and economics.
See, I would have loved the history piece of that. So I completely
digress.
So coming back to that. So now here we are. It's 2023. You're still in Utah.
Mm-hmm.
You're now married.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got married as an older guy.
Okay. So what's your wife's name?
Katie.
And you have kids?
We have kids. So my wife had a good career too. She was a television reporter, worked for NBC News. We finally decided we're going to settle down, slow our lives down a little bit, and start focusing on things that matter. I had my first child when I was 42 years old.
Why so quick?
Yeah. Seriously. You living in Utah, they just think you're the grandpa. No, it's funny because I had a delivery room experience of like, I'm holding Carter, my son. And I literally thought, this is the greatest moment of my life. I had the most overwhelming feeling of love, like I'd never experienced, there's nothing like that feeling.
No.
But I immediately had the thought, why on earth did I wait so long?
Yeah.
Like what riches could I have been chasing on Wall Street that had made that exchange okay? But you don't know what you don't know. I didn't know that, right? So now I'm 51 and we're adopting our 4th baby. And I'm too old for this crap. And I keep trying to talk my wife out of it, I'm like, so we had 1 biological. We did 44 rounds of in vitro.
Okay, wait, time out. I want to make sure they heard that right. Not 4.
Yeah.
44.
Yeah, 44. 44.
So if you want somebody that helps design and manage investments, you want somebody that's going to stay the course, right?
But, and for those of you that know.
Get invested and stay invested.
Yeah. Katie was chemically, hormonally pregnant for 9 straight years.
That is unbelievable.
By her own choice. Like I would have given up after 0 rounds. I in fact, I said, let's just adopt. And we were told we could not have kids. So Carter is a complete miracle. I mean, it shouldn't have been possible, actually. Even the doctor I was telling you at dinner last night pulled me aside one day while she was under the anesthetic and said, you're just lighting your money on fire. Your wife is doing this for therapy. And it was the next month we got pregnant with Carter. It was, and she's still our doctor, by the way. Then we became licensed foster parents. We're adopting our 3rd. We have a special needs 5-year-old who's got Angelman syndrome. And then we are adopting a baby that was born addicted. Mother was a meth dealer and addict. Yeah. And it looks like he's autistic. He's sneaking up on 2. You never really know for sure. It takes a little longer to know for sure, but I'm blessed beyond what I deserve. My family is everything to me now. Yeah.
I love your story. I love the start of it. Didn't finish college, chasing the Wall Street deal, dominated out there, moved to Utah, and then late in life by the world's standards, especially by Utah standards, settled down and now investing the same amount of time, energy, and resources that you did to have the success you did on Wall Street in your family. And that's really
some
cool
of us
to see.
Are just slower students. Someday I'll get my degree. This week in the news, I saw like an 89-year-old guy that went to his mom's house. And he's like 83 and the mom's like 99 or it's some weird thing like that. And there's a video of him saying, Mom, I got my diploma today.
No way.
This is going to be me. Right?
I love that. So now where it's 2023, you're still in Utah. You are the CEO of a firm called TownSquare. And TownSquare, as maybe redundant, but just to make sure that the listeners understand, you're working with independent advisors like Fiat, dozens of them, not hundreds of them, across the country and helping bring the horsepower that some of these large banking institutions have to the average lay investor in a firm where they're going to get that independent advisor thought.
TownSquare, we don't have financial advisors. We aren't financial advisors. Right. We're a subcontractor in your general contracting with a client for their whole financial life. We're helping with that investment piece. Yeah. Right. We're a big firm you've never heard of. Our group is 23 billion in assets, about 120 employees, and no one knows us, and it's great because we're kind of the guy behind the guy.
You're the guy that shows up and runs all the electrical wire and makes sure the thing actually turns on when you want it to turn on.
And honestly, I would not be very good at what you do. To be a great financial advisor is art.
Yeah,
because it's not. Too many financial advisors are saying, well, give me your age and your risk tolerance and whatever, and I'm going to tell you what you should do. Mm-hmm. That's not true. That's ridiculous. There are so many great ways to build an investment portfolio. So many, like an infinite number. The art is building something that's great for that person and being able to learn with them what is winning.
Yeah.
When the market does this, when interest rates do this, inflation does this, what is winning? And too many people want an easy button.
Yeah.
And it's not. We have to sit together and explore. You're a financial shrink.
Yeah.
And explore what winning is in somebody's retirement account. I don't know that I'm very good at that. But when you call me and say, this is the kind of portfolio I need.
Yeah.
Now I'm in my element. All right. We're going to build you that portfolio,
It's a really good point you made there. The definition of winning should be different for every family. Right. And
Absolutely.
So comparing and contrasting what you've got going on in your life, whether that's something as simple as the rate of return of your portfolio or something a little more complex relative to the standard deviation and the risk that you're taking, whatever that looks like, your definition of winning should be such that it's specific to your family. Matt and I say it all the time that your money shouldn't guide your life. Your life should guide your money. And people don't save piles. I get made fun of all the time because I say this all the time at the office, but people don't save piles of money to have piles of money, right? They didn't save to swim in it like Scrooge McDuck. They save it for a specific purpose or a specific outcome. And that outcome or that purpose is what should define winning for that family.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, and I'll give you a tangible example. 2 years ago, the S&P 500 is up 27%.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a client, big client, who says, how much were we up this year? And I say, well, the whole portfolio was up 14. And he says, the market was up 27. And I said, yeah. And we won. And the reason it was a victory is because last year when the market got hammered and bonds, including government bonds, were down a lot last year.
Yep.
Worst year in retirement accounts since the late 30s. He was up 2.
Wow.
Right. So he has a portfolio that is not built to maximize upside.
Yeah. He
has a portfolio that's been built to smooth returns. So he sleeps well at night. Right.
So it's a minivan. It's not a sports car.
And by the way, he's winning and he's thrilled.
Yeah.
Right. But 2 years ago, it looks on the surface like he's not winning.
Yeah.
Right.
It's mentally hard to get past that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's the old tortoise and the hare, right? And being the tortoise and watching the rabbit fly past you is really hard to watch them fly past,
right?
And just know I got to keep doing what I'm doing, and eventually I'm going to be the person ahead. Warren Buffett. This is Warren Buffett's whole shtick, right?
Yeah.
Like, stop trying to do anything fancy. Just get in the market, stay in the market, do what you do.
Yeah, investing in anything of any type is a long-term discipline. It just is. I got a 96-year-old client in San Francisco. He's my oldest living active client that I work with. And he's one of the most aggressive investors I work with. His account is 100% dialed up on octane. And it's perfect for him because he's got a lot of money. He's 96. Who cares?
Yeah.
He views it as he's managing it for his grandchildren.
Mm.
So why would he hurt them by burying the money under his mattress?
Yeah.
Right. So that to your point, everything is very unique to you and your circumstance, right?
Yeah.
So don't be distracted by the S&P 500. Don't just turn on CNBC and let that be your gauge for what investing victory looks like, right?
Yeah. Or even like last year's also a great year because you've got the Dow, which people pay attention to, down 9. You got the S&P down 20.
NASDAQ.
And then you got the NASDAQ, which was what, 33?
Murdered. Yeah.
Roughly, something like that. So
Treasury's down 37.
Yeah. So you could look at any indice and compare yourself to that indice and compare to one look terrible, compare to the next look amazing.
That's right.
But it's apples and kumquats.
Yeah. You have to be very careful with that.
Yeah. It's tough though. Yeah. It is tough. It's hard not to compare yourself to other people in all areas of life.
Of course.
Like your teeth are whiter than mine.
Yeah.
Like your shirt's nicer than mine. Like that kind of stuff.
You're closer to graduation than I am.
And I'm younger than you. That's impressive. It really is. Let's give some tangible thing. I want to give a couple tangible things. So like you're the average lay investor out there, right? And let's say you buy into everything we've talked about. Yep. I agree. I have to define what it means to win for my family. And I've got that nailed. I know what winning means for my family. Now, inside of that, what are some of the kind of the tips and tricks or kind of maybe you could say most overlooked, most missed, biggest mistakes that the average lay investor is making?
It's a no-brainer. The analogy is you go into the produce section at your favorite grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm dragging my 3 yelling kids with me, and we're going past the watermelon, they're like $1 a pound or whatever, 50s. I don't know what they're charging. And then I go about 6 more steps. And in the refrigerated section with the carrots, there's sliced watermelon that has saran wrap around it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about 3 or 4 times more money. And all that's happened is there's some high school kid in the back that went cut, saran wrap, quarter of a watermelon is 3.5 times more expensive.
Yeah.
Okay, that is Wall Street. I just summarized for you what I did for the first decade of my career. Okay. And I have tremendous compassion on people that are trying to get sound financial advice.
Yeah.
Because it's very hard to find, because there are so many conflicts of interest. How do you sit with somebody and know if they're giving you objective counsel versus they are being motivated to sell you a product by somebody that's paying them? It's very hard.
It is. Yeah.
It's like me going down to the auto mechanic. My car's not working. That's all I know. Can you fix it? And he calls me and says, you need a Johnson rod here. It's going to cost you $4,000. I'm like, yeah, Johnson rod, fix it, I guess. I don't know.
A muffler belt.
I don't know what. A muffler belt.
Blinker fluid.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't, so it's hard. So to answer your question, there is very low hanging fruit to clean up almost any investment portfolio I ever look at. And we look at thousands. We have a program.
Unintended with the low hanging fruit?
Yeah.
Given I got it. Okay.
It wasn't, but I'll take credit for it. There are costs and taxes that almost like if we filled this room here with investors, 9 out of 10 of them right now, I could save them money in just a couple minutes. It's not the stuff we like to talk about. We like to talk about, hey, I own Microsoft, I own Apple, I own Amazon. Like, oh, I got large cap growth, I got emerging markets, I got some high yield debt, private equity. All right, that's what we like talking about, right?
I'm sure those are that last one is exactly what they are. Yeah,
I mean, guys in my business, that's what we all want to talk about. That I'm not going to talk about. What's the structure by which you own those things?
Yeah,
no one wants to talk about.
Yeah,
but we'll pick you up very easily 1 to 3% in savings per year, just on cost and tax. Forget the actual assets for a second.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what a lot of people are missing. And it's like in any business, if you don't know what you're doing, you're stepping over dollars to pick up dimes. You might go out and say, hey, listen, I'm using a really low cost Vanguard portfolio. That's great. Vanguard's actually true. We have billions of dollars at Vanguard.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually what Jack did in building that firm and that model is one of the greatest things that's happened to retail investors in the history of the stock market.
Yeah.
However, I have clients that is a major mistake of them. We could save them way more money than even buying a low cost index fund of Vanguard, right? You got to do your homework. You got to know, and the thing is, you need some guidance. I think you used an analogy earlier today, something about a guide up a mountain, I mean, we need Sherpas, we need guides. It's an important part of the process because there's no way I can know all that information.
Well, and my favorite part about that is it's something that's tangible. It's not your opinion.
That's right.
Right. It's not, I used this analogy earlier too. It's not my mutual fund could be your mutual fund. So trust me, I'll make you more money. It's hey, we can buy the exact same things that you have. It's not about what you own. It's how you own it.
That's right.
And so I can build the exact same house. I can just get it done a lot more efficiently. Or if we we build the house a little bit differently, all of your utility bills for the maintenance part of your home are going to be a lot less.
And usually when we start working with clients, even very, very wealthy clients, we don't start by talking about performance.
Yeah.
I can show you funds that beat all your mutual funds up to your point.
Sure.
Like unbelievable. But if you can't get the foundation of the house right, you're going to just pay way too much in taxes and extra costs. Like you're going to. And the average person doesn't understand that even inside the household products, the household name mutual funds and things like this, how Wall Street's sort of picking your pocket behind the scenes. I did this for a long time. I was the guy.
Yeah.
So when I say to you, I'm a recovering Wall Streeter, that's actually what I'm talking about. Like there's like a penitence going on here.
You know what it reminds me of?
Minneapolis today.
That if you see that movie, Catch Me If You Can.
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
That's one of the greatest movies of all time.
Yeah. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. I'm not going to spoil it for you, even though it's
amazing. And the book, by the way, is great too.
But the premise is that he is one of the greatest con men of all time. And at the end of the movie, he ends up working for the FBI to train them how to do what he did. I was the fleecer, right? I'm going to teach you how I did it so that you know how to stop it.
Yeah.
And so for all intents and purposes, you're
I did it for a long time.
You are Frank Abagnale.
Yeah, for a long time. And by the way, it's totally legal.
So let's be clear.
It might not be ethical.
What he was doing in that movie was not legal.
It might be ethical.
Yeah.
Not ethical.
But it was legal.
Wall Street is fraught with this.
Yeah. Frank Abagnale.
And that's great. I watched it on a plane the other night. I was trying to sleep on a long flight and it was in my TV.
Well, and you're a good looking dude too, just like Leo is. So it works really well.
Leo and I are not exactly in the same looks category.
Oh, I'm going to leave that one alone. Okay. So first tangible thing is finding a way to own, even if you love what you own, to possibly own it differently to try to mitigate some of the costs associated with how it's packaged up and the taxes associated.
Exactly.
Anything else you want to add to that? What would be, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but what would the next thing be? Okay. So let's say we get rid of the fat and we have the airtight home where the furnace and everything's working perfectly, where there's no possible way to own this home more efficient or make it more efficient. Now what?
What I want to talk about now is the fun stuff. But I want to talk about the funds. I want my mutual fund to stack up against yours. Like, this is what I want to do. This is what I do for a living. And I want everybody to think I'm really smart.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. This is what we do. Right. But the truth is, by the numbers, my vast sophistication is not what you need.
Yeah.
I like to think that's what it is. But once you hammer and get out cost and tax problems, which, by the way, the average person isn't totally aware of how to do.
Sure.
Right. Yep. Okay. We've moved past that. Self-defeating behaviors are actually the next one. I wish that
I didn't think you were going there.
I know.
Okay.
I know. Because you and I don't talk about it a lot because you already know this, right? But what you see that is the most destructive are the bad decisions that people make.
Sure.
I'm going to give you a stat that goes against what you and I want our clients to know. Okay. But it's important that the listeners know this. 70% of all investment returns are simply being invested. It doesn't even matter in what. So you can have the worst funds generally that trade
with all the extra
and
cost.
You're getting 70% of the return. So what idiots like me are doing are working out the other third. Right? Like, that really is the truth of what's happening. Now we're going to start fine tuning, making it more optimal, right? We have great funds. In fact, of 5,000 firms in the United States 2 years ago, over the prior 5 years, we were in the top 5 of all firms. Like, that's the level of performance. It's good performance.
Yeah.
But you're jumping over really important things. Like when I see people do things like, hey, you know what? Let's sell everything right now, because I think we're going into a recession and inflation is 9%.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that was in October. Market's up 15% since then. Like, the number of times, I'll give you one stat. Let's say you knew every single time a recession was starting in this country, going back to the Great Depression. You knew in advance that a recession was coming. Here's a problem. Let's say you get it right going in the door and you sell all of your investments in your house and you hold a bunch of cash. Here's the problem. Financial markets bottom on average 15 months before the recession ends. Think about that for a second. 15 months in advance. And the S&P 500, as one marker, is up an average of 61% return in the 15 months. So you cannot drive your investment car watching the rearview mirror.
Right.
It's a very forward-looking discipline. And I notice a lot of people chasing. They jump between financial advisors. They jump between funds. They jump between strategies, jump between firms. They are chewing themselves up, moving around without a coherent and consistent strategy. Time tested. And it's boring is why. It's not in Twitter. It's boring.
Right? Investing is the class that 70% of your grade is just going to like showing up.
100%.
Just be there. And don't try to outsmart the class or do anything fancy.
70% of the time it works
every time. It's funny because I think back to when I took my first ever securities exam to get into this industry. And I had to study something called the odd lot theory. And the odd lot theory states, watch what the average lay investor does, do the exact opposite, and you will make money. Which is really sad when you stop and think about it.
Kind of insulting too.
It is kind of insulting. And the fact that they would make you study it is also very interesting.
I'm surprised they didn't just call it the idiot study, the idiot principle.
We are running up on time. And so I hate to do this. I got to have you back. But here's how I want to end. Nothing with what we were talking about. I'm going to do 5 fast questions. These are not prepared.
They're not. I have no idea.
I don't even know what I'm going to ask you yet.
Okay.
It's going to be whatever comes out of my head. And I just want your gut reaction to these questions.
Okay. I think I'm ready.
Okay. You ready?
I wasn't great at game shows, but okay. I think I'm ready.
You get to take one more trip for the rest of your life. Where are you going?
Hawaii.
Okay.
And I'm taking all my kids. They love it. And I love taking them.
Awesome. I love that. Now, have you been there with 4 yet?
No.
That does not count as one of my questions.
No. I have an incredible nanny that watches the 2 little ones while I take the other 2.
Okay. So we were joking around earlier about your palate. You have the food and beverage palate of a child.
I do.
What is your favorite, like it's your last meal? What are you eating?
Abalone.
What?
I know. Isn't that crazy? You can't find it anymore. I mean, it's like outlawed in California. When I was a kid.
What is abalone? Like just bologna?
It's a shellfish. No, abalone.
Abalone.
Like a mussel, like a shellfish.
Okay.
It grows on the bottom of rocks on the California coast, Washington, Oregon coast.
You're not supposed to eat stuff that grows on the bottom of rocks.
It's unbelievable.
You're not supposed to eat that.
If you can buy it, it's like $100 a pound. I actually haven't had it in years. But when I was a kid, we drive over to the coast. I grew up in Northern California. We drive over there. We get it ourselves. Go out, low tide, get it off the rocks, prep it.
Awesome.
Unbelievable. I know that's totally random, but
dead or alive, if you give me one person, who would it be?
Jesus Christ.
I mean, that's a great answer.
I probably shouldn't say it's a cheat. We probably should get the next one.
Yeah, let's go number 2.
But like John Adams.
Really?
Yeah. American history buff.
I am too. But of all the
we don't even have time to go into it.
Yeah.
He's unbelievable.
Yeah. Okay.
It may have come down to him. It was him or Washington it came down to.
Okay.
I mean, like literally decided that we had a country.
Yep. Yeah. Your biggest fear in life?
It's evolved. I don't spend much time thinking about things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But being a father has completely changed this for me. It would be something along the lines of my children not understanding how much I love them and how much unconditionally I just love them.
Yeah.
Regardless of what they end up doing, it doesn't matter to me. Like the great loss in life would be if they get older and they don't understand that kind of love. That would be the biggest L for me.
Yeah. Well, all the feels there, man. I completely understand what you said. And we were talking about that offline, about that moment you have your first child and what that's all about and how you feel. It's pretty crazy stuff. Last question. One book you would recommend to the average person, regardless of who they are in life?
Okay, like non-biblical.
Yeah.
Like you got to have.
Yeah. Same thing was like, yeah.
Okay. That is such a great question.
Which means you don't have an answer.
No, I have too many. I got to give a couple. Red Notice.
Okay.
At the Devil's Table.
I haven't read either one of those.
Yeah. Lone Survivor.
Yep. I've read that one. I've actually seen him live.
Oh, you have?
I have, yes. It was amazing.
Spectacular. I got two buddies, ex-SEALs. I love getting stories from those guys.
I'm actually reading Robert O'Neill's book right now.
Oh, yeah, I've read that. Yeah. Red Notice is unbelievable for your business-minded people out there. It's all a true story about the first investment fund in Russia after the wall came down.
Oh, wow.
Mind-blowing. But yeah, and At the Devil's Table is a great read, true story about a guy that was the head of security in the Cali cartel in the 80s, rolled on the Ochoa brothers, couldn't get the FBI or the CIA on the phone, called from a payphone in Colombia. He's in witness protection still to this day.
Oh my gosh.
And this is his story. And it is lights out. It's one of these books like no one's really heard of or whatever.
Huh.
Yeah.
All right. I have a new read. It's humbling, honestly, that you would take the time to be here. It's humbling, actually, that you would partner with firms like ours. The success you've had and the things that you've done in this industry are amazing. And you should feel awesome about it. The fact that you're still in repentance mode of trying to be your Frank Abagnale works super well for guys like me. So I greatly appreciate it. I essentially am the FBI.
I love it.
And I get to hire you to teach.
Actually, stuff
how to love on the families.
I can do a lot of fun things in this career, but my favorite is still this. Just meeting with advisors and their clients is so much more fun than being with executives and Fortune 500 companies. There's all these institutions. It's not their money.
Yeah.
But man, when you sit with a husband and a wife who spent the whole career, like it's real. This is still my favorite thing. So thanks for having me out.
Absolutely, man.
Me to be here.
I greatly appreciate it. Listeners, thanks so much for joining us for another episode of Every Day is Saturday. We appreciate, as always, you being here. If you have not yet subscribed to the podcast, we would appreciate it if you would do so. As the kids say, you can smash that like button down below. You can subscribe to the podcast, any platform that you find a podcast on. We are on it. If you want any more information on the firm, that can be found on our website, fiatwm.com. Kurt, you're a rock star. Thanks for being here, brother.
Thanks, man.
All right.
We'll see you again soon.
See everybody.
Thank you for listening to Every Day is Saturday. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Fiat Wealth Management. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.